So welcome to Before College TV. This is a panel discussion with Emory University students. We have the best of the best here to answer all of your questions. These students have been there, they've done it. They're no longer there because coronavirus sent them home, but they are still students and they're all going back, assuming they pass and school starts again. They're all going to be going back. And these are the students who are creating the experience that makes Emory such a rich, incredible campus and community. Hey, panelists, how you doing?
Good.
Doing well. Can't complain.
Well, this is great. I'm curious now, and I'll get to all of your names, and we're going to include all your information. So if there are students or parents who are watching this, whenever they're watching it, you might get questions on Instagram or through some of your social media from students and parents who have seen you here. But right now, it's just so we can date this, it's April 1st, and it's about 4:02 Eastern time. Now, the question is, if you weren't here, if your life hadn't been turned upside down, where would you be in a normal world had school not been canceled?
For me, I would be walking out of my negotiations class, probably getting some food at Cox, which is just like the food court that we have there. It's okay, kind of sucks, but it's where I go after class to get food. And then after that, I just stay like on campus most of the time because I have a Wednesday evening class also, which is from like 6:30 to 9:30.
Interesting. So for those of you who don't know, this is Farhan, right? Farhan?
Yeah.
Wonderful to meet you. Farhan is a junior. You are a business and quantitative sciences major. Is that right?
Yeah.
Why?
So coming into college, initially, I thought I was going to do like medicine just to like fulfill a parents' kind of dream. But then I realized I didn't really like that path. And then I figured out business was what I was really good at / enjoyed. And then the quant sciences stuff, it's just, I always liked working with numbers and like computer software and stuff like that. So combining the two, I did the double major. I'm doing the double major and, getting more involved in the B school also.
All right. Where else would some of you be right now? Now it's 4:04. Okay. So where would you be on Wednesday at 4:04 on campus?
I would probably be in my research lab. We research mosquitoes and vector-borne diseases. It's really it's a fun time. And then we have a lot of the people who work there, the postdocs are all really funny, and it's really cool. I joined this semester, and I think I'll probably get credit for it if classes come back next semester.
So you are in a lab researching mosquitoes.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to watch them suck out the blood and get big?
Sometimes we have to blood feed them, and so sometimes people put their arms in the cages and just let them bite them. I don't do that though. I don't want that.
Right, that's a little twisted.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, this is Erica Kahn, and Erica, you're from Cleveland, Ohio. You went to Hathaway Brown. Is that right? High school?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And then is that a big high school, little high school?
It's a little school. It's an all-girls school.
All-girls school. So that's interesting because Emory is not all girls.
Yeah, it is not all girls.
Right. How is it adjusting from an all-girls school to a school that has many genders?
It wasn't that hard. It wasn't that different, but there was a difference in some of the bigger lecture classes. I'd noticed like lots of boys talking or something, and in my business class I thought I was maybe going to do pre-biz, and then I was like, no, I didn't like it. So
what, too many boys?
I didn't like the environment of it. I felt like there was a lot of times when the boys would try and say things that girls had already said. But my teacher was really good about that stuff. He always made examples feminine and
That's a huge issue of being in a community where you now have to adjust to that. I mean, that's a big change. So I'm interested to hear more about that. And if anyone has questions about that, again, not just today, but at any time, if you have gone to a smaller school, then you're in a big school, it's really different. That's really helpful to know. So now we got two more people here. I'm curious, Raina or Ben, which of you is excited to share? What would you be doing right now?
Okay, I think I would probably be in the new student center, which is kind of like, I guess, new student center that Emory just built.
Yeah.
And for most of our freshman and sophomore year, we were living on a construction site. So ever since this new student center has been built, I love to just like hang out there or study there. And it's a little bit less stressful than the library. I find like you can still do work, but you can also go and just hang out with people. And it's kind of supposed to be like a communal space on campus. So I feel like instead of going home right after classes, I love to just like hang out there and procrastinate or do work depending on the day.
Does anybody else hang out at the new student center? That's where you guys do.
That was probably gonna be my answer as well, that I would be heading over there after my class that ends at 3:45. It's a great space on campus now that we have it. Very jealous of the freshmen who like are just gonna have it for all 4 years and never live with them. Like for us, it was a hole in the ground for 2 years.
So you and Raina would be at the new student center. Are you all friends?
I'm
friends
like
with Raina.
completely friends with all three of them, but I don't know if they totally know each other.
I've like met Ben, I think, a couple of times.
Yeah, I think we met once or twice, but I've never met Erica. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. Same. Yeah.
How many of you changed your major at least once since you've been a student?
I did.
You changed? The three of you have not changed your major? You're still the same major?
Yeah, I kept my major.
I kept my major. I considered adding a double major, but I ultimately decided not to. But I kept the original major the whole time.
Yeah.
Farhan, when did you change your major?
I changed sophomore year, like first semester of sophomore year.
Yeah.
Because I was using the first year to really explore, and then after that, I like initially decided I was gonna do like pre-med, like that's what it was on paper, but then I was like no, and changed to business.
I came in undecided and kind of had a couple ideas, and then used my freshman year to explore. And since I'm a sophomore, I like declared my major this year.
Nice. And what's your major?
Environmental science.
Nice. So, Erica, was Emory your first choice? And if not, what was your first choice?
Emory was my first choice. I ED'd to Emory, and it was one of the first colleges I actually visited. And then my mom dragged me on a bunch of other college tours, even though I was like, I like this one, but just so we could see all the others. But it stayed my favorite the whole time. The campus was so gorgeous, and I had a really good tour guide that was just super excited about Emory, and for me, a lot of it seemed like the teacher connections is sort of what drew me in, because it seemed a little more genuine than like the other campus tours I went on, and the class sizes, and I just liked how I could switch and come in undecided, and like it was kind of easier that way.
So I was someone who I actually was abroad my junior year of high school, which is kind of different. So when I came back for senior year, I felt super behind with like looking at schools, and I had no idea where I wanted to go to college. And so I kind of did the same thing that Erica said. Like I went on a trip with my mom, kind of on like a road tour of like tons of different schools.
What were some of the schools you visited?
So I went to like William and Mary, University of Richmond. I didn't look at Tulane, but I applied there, Emory, and then some more Northeastern schools, so NYU. I looked at the Boston schools just because I'm from that area, but I didn't really want to stay home. And then my mom went to Smith, which is an all-women's school, but I knew that wasn't really for me. So both my parents' schools, I looked at those. But I felt like with Emory, as soon as I went there, it was just the one that stood out to me the most. And so I applied ED1. Just because I like the idea of kind of being done with it earlier on. Like it felt very easy just to apply ED1 and like hopefully just be like done and committed. So then I was lucky and ended up having just like a really easy process of like one and dart, or I applied to other schools, but once I was in ED, it was like I no longer had to worry about it, and it wasn't even like Christmas time yet.
Right. That's amazing. I mean, it's nice when it works out that way, and you know, your life has worked out. Farhan, was Emory your first choice?
It was not.
Yes, I'm so excited. Thank you, first of all, for not having this be your first choice, so this question doesn't suck. Okay. So what was your first choice, man?
My first choice was Columbia.
And what happened with Columbia?
I didn't get it. So I was just like, I applied ED there, and I
Yeah.
was like, all right, I was sad when I didn't get it, but then I was like, all right, let me look at the other options. And so I'm originally from New York City. I was born there. I was raised there. And when I was 11, my family and I, we moved down to Alabama, which is like Alabama. And so after that, I was just like, all right, where should I go? Should I stay in the Southeast or should I go back to the Northeast? So I was applying to schools in the Northeast and the Southeast. Emory like piqued my interest. Obviously, it fit like the pre-med like pathway I was on at the beginning, but also I toured it. I loved like the campus. I loved like the opportunity to go do different things. Like it's like you could do law, you could do business like I'm doing now. You could really do anything. And so, you know, after like thinking on different schools that I got into, and then Emory, I was just like, all right, Emory fits the bill. It's close to home, like relatively close to home, but also like a lot of flexibility.
And so you were living in New York, in like New York City, is that right?
Yeah, I live in Manhattan.
So Manhattan to Alabama, is that
Yeah.
like an easy transition? I mean, it seems
Not
very
at
simple.
all. Not at all. Like when I was young, like I lived in like the heart of the city almost, and then when I come down to like Alabama, it's like it's going from like taxis and like horns on the side of the street to like crickets at night. So it's like very different. But now like growing up, and I'm more appreciative of the quiet and like the calm. And so it's like there's pros and cons to it. But you know, for my near future, I think I'm gonna work in like New York City or some busy type of city
Right.
for years.
So that's interesting. And I want to know, Ben, was Emory your first choice?
It was not.
Oh, good.
I didn't really have a like first choice. I did not ED anywhere because I like could not commit to one school because like I couldn't decide. So I applied to a whole handful of schools.
Uh-huh.
I had family who went to Emory. I had a cousin who went there and loved it. So my mom kind of was like, "You need to apply there." I wasn't really originally looking at it, and then I came down for acceptance students day, and immediately like when we're taking the flight down, like didn't really know if I was going to go there, and then was sold on it honestly at accepted students day, and haven't really looked back. Which I sound like a pamphlet, but that's honestly what happened. So,
You know, I mean, there's a few things. Like, first of all, newly admitted student day is not happening.
right.
So, you know, if you're talking to a student who's a senior who is kind of like you, who's tell us a little bit more about you, Ben. So if somebody is watching and they want to identify with Ben, like who is Ben and what makes up you?
Well, that's a pretty big question, I guess,
Interview question.
relevant to the discussion we're having right now. I think the biggest thing I was looking for at school is like besides academics or whatever, like the boring stuff, because they're all kind of the same at a certain range. Like Emory's like 21st or whatever. Like I think probably all the top 30 schools are like, they all kind of have the same thing. They say the same stuff in info sessions, sort of. I cared a lot about what, like if people had friends, I guess. I think when you go on tours, if you have the opportunity to do that, it's like a lot of schools I would notice people were walking around alone or walking around and kind of had their head down or were on their phone. And I think when I toured Emory and like walked around Emory and talked to people, it just stood out to me how much people seemed to be in groups and have friends and like just generally be in a good mood. And I think I can say as a student, like that still holds true. I think it's like pretty rare that I walk between my classes and I don't run into someone I know and like have a quick conversation with them. And I just think people are like open to having those like quick conversations. And I think that was really important to me because I toured some other schools where people seemed very closed off, which was something that was a red flag to me when I was touring colleges.
Yeah, that's really, it's really interesting. And it's so hard to capture that energy of like walking around and getting that feel. But I think one of the things, you know, you've all been so eager to do this and so open to doing this. So it really speaks to, I think, what you're talking about of just really wanting to offer and invite people into your life and be in that place. So that's really cool, man. When you got rejected, I talk about rejection in a very like clear-cut way. For me, it's not emotional, it's just information. But like when you got rejected, were you devastated? I know Farhan, you were pretty sad, man. Like, were you crying?
I I wasn't like crying, but I definitely went to like a slump for like a week and a half and was just trying to like think about like what the next steps were. Cause, at that age, rejection is emotional. And it's just like, oh, this is the one thing I want in my life and I won't get it right now. So what do I do now? You don't really think about like how to get better. But after I got rejected, I was just like, all right, I'm not going to go there. It took a lot. It took like counselors, like school counselors to talk to me. It took like friends, like a lot of friends, like I used them for like support to figure out what the next steps were. And then after that, like, I picked from a hand from the schools that I was going to go to.
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard, when you're someone, all of you clearly have been successful in the classroom because you don't get into Emory if you're not doing well. So the idea of getting rejected and not having to deal with, rejection, this is really, I think, the first time a lot of people deal with that real sting.
I think that looking back, and it sounds super cliche, but like not everything happens for a reason, but I think you can find a reason for like most things that happen. I think out of my broader friend group in high school, like everyone was happy with where they ended up, even if it wasn't their first choice. So I guess just like, I think things do work out, but definitely in the moment, it's hard to get, like to put together a whole package of all the great things you think you've done and then have a school just be like, no.
Let's go to you, Erica. I know that you are also involved with Panhellenic. And for people who don't know about Greek life, maybe you could, you know what, I'm going to have you do, because you can share some of that as well. I also know that you're involved with dance too. And I think that's really cool to, to find a place where you can do something you love to do. So like, tell us a little bit about the places you spend your time at Emory. And I just want to frame it even wider. So when I help people to navigate life in college, I talk about find schools where you can find your places. Places are where you sweat, play, pray, live, learn, lead, love, and work. So it's sweat, play, pray, live, learn, lead, love, and work. Was that something, did you plan on getting involved with Greek life? And did you plan on getting involved with dancing? And jump on in and tell me about your life at Emory.
Yeah, so the dancing is actually kind of funny. So I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and I figure skated like my whole life. When I was looking at colleges, having like an ice rink was really important to me, and Emory does not have that, or like a skating club, and like skating's not a thing there. So like that was something I kind of had to give up in order to go there because I really liked the school. So I was like, I've always wanted to dance, so I just like tried out for a bunch of like the dance like groups on campus, like at the activities fair and the club fair. I just like signed up on the email list for a bunch and like saw when all their tryouts were. And I actually joined a belly dancing group on campus, which I don't think anyone saw coming. And that was a really good decision. I think one of the best choices I made. Like, I always knew I was going to join Greek life. I have an older sister and she was involved in it. But a lot of my close friends I found out through this dance group. It's really fun, and we've like performed at really cool places like the Fox Theater and things like that. And it gives me outlets to like other parts of campus culture that I wouldn't have otherwise seen.
Is anyone else involved with belly dancing? Ben or Farhan? Are you? No, or Raina? No? Okay, so this is your own thing, Erica. But it sounds fascinating. So when you did that, did you have to try out?
Mm-hmm. I tried out for a bunch of different groups, and I got lucky because a lot of the seniors on like the group had left or people were abroad, so they had more open spaces and they took a lot of freshmen. And then I kind of became close with like all those freshmen. And then like we all got in, and then this year like we became like a lot more popular and like a lot more people tried out, and it was really cool to see how it was like kind of growing.
That's awesome. So that's really where you kind of put down your roots freshman year. You'd say it was your dancing experience, which is fascinating because you were a skater, but you still found an outlet to do that. So let's see, your freshman year, Raina, tell me about where did you find your places where you were able to find connection?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think something that Emory talked about a lot, especially when I was on the tours, is like the first year experience. I feel like Emory is very invested in like their first year experience and like the first year dorms and how you're supposed to feel like an allegiance to them. So I feel like I kind of fell into that I lived in Dobbs, which was like the crappiest, smallest dorm in all of campus. It's like tiny. It's like 101 years old. There's like cockroaches in the basement. And so I lived not only in this dorm, but in the basement of it, like underground.
Okay.
And so even though my roommate and I got like the worst situation, I feel like all the people in our dorm became so close and kind of almost like bonded over being in the crappiest dorm that became a huge part of my freshman year and almost like not like my identity, but because that sounds weird, but honestly, I felt like the dorm you lived in was almost like a tribe or something. Like you met all the people there. Like the essays who were sophomore advisors, I developed a relationship with a lot of them and kind of like looked up to what they were doing. And like they told me about Greek life or like different things that they were involved in that later I became involved in. So I felt like where I lived that year and the people on my floor and just the people in the building were kind of the people I was always around and could hang out with. So I feel like that was definitely a very homey feel, and it helped me with the transition a lot from home into like college living.
Yeah. I love hearing about the cockroaches because I know it's like we don't always get to hear that part, like when you're on the tour, but I mean, you found a way to make it great. I was watching Farhan and you were like nodding, like Dobbs is like not the most desirable place.
No.
Huh? Like if you get
I lived
Dobbs,
in the opposite. I lived in Raoul, which is the nicest place.
Me too.
so Raoul was fancy.
Yeah, brand new.
Tell me about the fancy life there.
I think it's almost the exact opposite of what Raina just said. I felt like Raoul was so big that I didn't get to meet a ton of people. Like there's like certain floors in Raoul. If you're on those floors, like you get like a good community environment. But I lived on the first floor and no one really talked to each other. The only good thing out of it was that like my friend that I took a class with that like went on to become my best friend, he lived next door. And so like we both didn't like our roommate. So we just ended up hanging out together so much that like we lived together sophomore year, and now we live together junior and then senior year. And so like I liked that aspect of Raoul, but it was so big for me coming from like a small high school too. I felt like I was just like, I almost turned into like a recluse. Like freshman year, Farhan would not be on this call. Like you wouldn't see me on this because I was just so like, oh, this is such a huge university, because I went from like 150 like size class, like senior class in high school, to like now there's like 1,100 plus like kids like around me. So I was just like, wow, this is like a lot. So, you know, that was my experience freshman year. But like sophomore year, once I like got into like a smaller space and then started to branch out more with clubs and other things, like I opened up, and now like I'd say like I'm more social now than I ever was.
Yeah, I love that when you started off like so shy and quiet, and then like there's the old Farhan and now there's the new one, which is great. It's good. I'm glad the new one's here. But I think most people start off like you. Ben, what about you? Where do you spend your time freshman year? Where were your places, man?
Yeah, so my experience dorm-wise was in between, I think, the two experiences we've heard about. I was in Hamilton, which is a newer building and has a lot of the nicer amenities, but is a much smaller building than Raoul. So I had good relationships with everyone on my floor, but they definitely weren't like my main group. But a group of them got very close. I was really lucky that my roommate and I got along and still do get along very well. So we ended up like rushing a fraternity together and joining, and then we lived together again my sophomore year, and he's still like one of my best friends on campus. So I spent a lot of time with him, and then I ended up joining SBC, which is like the group on campus that basically does school spirit, which was a very different thing from anything I did in high school, but ended up being like one of the best decisions I ever made. And so I made a lot of friends through that.
Did you have to be admitted or recruited, or was there like, did they take everybody?
So no, so it's an application process. And then there were actually like some interviews and stuff. But I heard about it at the activities fair and threw in an application, and it just happened to work out. Yeah.
And this is the student programming council, right?
Yes. We put on so we do all of homecoming, and then the homecoming concert. And then in the spring, Emory has a thing called Julie's Week that we're trying to do right now. We're doing it virtually. Cool. And it's basically Julie is like the unofficial mascot of Emory. She's a skeleton. It's kind of hard to explain. But I think Emory has a full webpage dedicated to her if you want to read about it.
We will link to that in the description of this discussion. So for sure,
Yeah.
we'll share it. That's awesome. I get so excited when I hear about people who are involved with program council, and I noticed that you are involved with bands, right? Like you love music, right?
Yeah. So that's been a really cool opportunity that I've gotten through it, is that this year I was the band party chair, which meant I basically like plan and execute the concerts. So this fall we had Earth Gang and Rico Nasty, if you know who they are. And this spring, unfortunately, our concert was canceled because of coronavirus, but hopefully we'll be back next fall.
Well, I think SPC is great. There's these groups where you had to apply to be selected, but what are some other groups and organizations? What are some other places where if a student wants to get involved and meet people, because, and I think Farhan, especially being shy, being a little bit introverted that first year, what are some places that you can kind of rattle off? Because I know you're all involved with so many different things where students can get involved that tend to be really popular for first year students. And then when you tell me the things, tell me if people need to apply, and try to include a few where you don't need to apply as well.
Go ahead, you go ahead.
I would definitely recommend applying to be an orientation leader. So that's something I did at the end of my first year, actually. So as a freshman, I was applying to be a freshman orientation leader at the beginning of my sophomore year, which seems kind of crazy. But first year orientation is like one of the best programs I've ever done, and I'm applying to do it again as a senior, which is kind of sad, like as the last time. But that's definitely a program at Emory that I think is super unique. And as I said before, I think Emory is super invested in their first year experience and just really welcoming people. So I think the orientation program is super awesome for anyone who like wants to push themselves kind of to be more outgoing and to be a leader.
For me, I'd say most of my organizations that I got involved with required some sort of application or interview process, like what Ben mentioned earlier. But there were a couple freshman year that, like, I was involved with Outdoor Emory. That doesn't require any application, but you just basically pay like a small fee and you can go on a bunch of these crazy like fun trips over the weekends that happen throughout the semester.
What trips?
You can go paintballing, you can go backpacking, you can go like whitewater rafting, like insane things, like all for like pretty much no money. You pay like $60 at the beginning of the year, and then you can go on all these trips for free.
Were people nice to you when you did that? Because you said you were kind of shy. Like, did you meet people?
Yeah, so like my first step, like kind of breaking outside of my bubble, was like before I even came to Emory, I went on a SOAR trip, which was just like they take a group of students out to go on some sort of trip before Emory like classes begin, and I went backpacking. And so there was like 3 or 4 different leaders on the trip. I'm really, really close with all of those leaders, and then there's like a group of 10 students that went backpacking with me, and like 5 of them are like my closest friends. So
that's great.
It was like a super like great way to break out. Freshman year, that's like the only thing you don't really have to apply to. Like RHA, I guess you don't have to apply. I'm not too sure, but everything else, like,
is the Resident Hall Association, right?
Yeah, I think you can just be a member, but correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Like, I don't know about that one too much. But every other club that I'm a part of now, like, it took like, for most of them, it took a couple of rounds of like almost like applying, recruiting, and like networking to get in. But then after that, it's like I'm a part of this huge, like, great organization in each one of them.
You can get rejected. You got rejected at first, or not? You know, they didn't. You know.
Yeah, I mean, for
I keep talking to you about rejection, man. I feel bad, but it's like, you know.
No, I think it's fair. I think it's fair. I think it's like rejection happens in life. If you're not like equipped to handle it properly, then you're not going to grow from it.
Yeah.
But like the club that I'm most involved with now, or the 2 clubs, the first one being the Impact Investing Group, like I got rejected twice, I think. 2 semesters in a row, and then now I'm like I run the loans for the group, so like I'm pretty high up there, and it took some time, but the rejections really helped like build my character to get there. And then in AK Psi, I'm the president now, and I got rejected once from there.
Yeah, I love that. You know what? Thanks for sharing all that, because it's like I think that's the hardest part of that first year, and that's one of the things. All the things that you're sharing, and I want to get to you, Erica and Ben, as well. The reason that I want you to share this is because anybody who's watching this, they can be in these places, you know. And I know that we talked about this before. I'm going to share your Instagram handles, and I know that you said you're open to answering questions, because I think that's something that people are so afraid. Seniors and juniors, they're so afraid to talk to you because you're like so powerful but you're also kind and want to help.
I think club sports, I'll give them a shout out, that if you like any level of athleticism, there you can join a team. They have everything from like ultimate frisbee to like a water polo team. So there's probably something for you there. And most of those sports take like people of all skill levels. So that's something you can get into without having to really interview or try out.
Have you done that?
I did crew my first semester. I ended up not sticking with it. I was a little bit overextended my first semester of freshman year, which is definitely a trap I would advise people to avoid falling into. And then something else that's big at Emory that I had never planned to be involved with, but I ended up getting involved with Greek life. And that has definitely been a very large part of my Emory experience. And so I think just be open to that, because high school me would have never expected or planned to be involved with Greek life. But
Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah.
I hate to talk over you. Gosh, you guys are amazing. And I want to get to some stuff, but I want to really hit that, because when I talk to high school students, I'm like, how many of you would never consider being part of a fraternity or sorority, right? And that was you, right? That was you.
Yeah, so I remember distinctly being home over winter break. So recruitment for sororities and rush for fraternities happens second semester of freshman year is the first time you're eligible to do that at Emory. I was home over winter break and like had a discussion with my parents where I was like, I will not be going through rush. And then 3 weeks later, I had to call them and be like, hey, I think I'm joining a fraternity. So like even halfway through freshman year, what happened? I went through rush because some friends I had from upperclassmen friends from various clubs and stuff were kind of like, hey, come by the house, come meet some people. And I ended up just having really great conversations, which I think changed my perspective. I think that as a high schooler, your opinion on Greek life is kind of what you see in movies or TV shows, which I can't speak to any other school, but I don't think that is reflective of what Greek life is like at Emory. Like, I think, like, to something we said in the very beginning of the conversation, like, everyone who gets into Emory, like, works very hard in high school, has, like, a very similar academic background and whatever. Like, it's not a state school Greek life experience. People aren't, we don't even have a football team. No one's tailgating. People aren't partying every day. So it's just a way to make a large group of friends and have that resource. And so I think like a third of the school is involved in Greek life, which is pretty high. But I think most people involved in it probably had never planned to be in Greek life, at least in my experience.
Yeah, you know what? There are a lot of problems we hear about in the news, but the things that you don't hear about is the community, the philanthropy, the leadership, the just all of the academic resources, how each person really wants to elevate each other. I mean, there are a lot of really positive pieces. And just to touch on this one more second, because I know, Raina, a big part of your life is being involved with Greek life. You are president of the Pan-Hellenic Council. People might not know what that is, but will you just explain that real quickly so people can become familiar with what that means?
Yeah, so basically we have EPC, which is like the Emory Pan-Hellenic Council. And so that is a part of the National Pan-Hellenic Conference, which is kind of fancy terms. But basically, EPC just oversees the 8 sorority chapters that we have. So I have like an executive board that I work with and advisors that are part of OSFL, like the Office of Sorority Fraternity Life at Emory. So I work with them and we kind of just oversee the different chapters and try to really create like a sense of community and try to promote different values, like just making the community better with philanthropy or academics or like whatever each chapter really wants to improve upon or whatever like the Emory community feels like they need to see more. So it's kind of just that whole body and network of people, which is pretty large at our school.
And you're the president of that. So if anyone has questions about that, they could certainly reach out to you. And I know that, Ben, you're also really involved as well. But you were involved with maybe you're not. Are you involved with your fraternity?
No, I'm not on exec or anything of my fraternity. I'm just a member. I'm much more involved with SPC and some on-campus organizations.
Gotcha. And Farhan, you're involved with that. You're president of your fraternity.
Yeah, but mine's not like officially Greek. It's just like a professional like business fraternity. So we don't like have a house on the row or anything, but we have like our own national organization and stuff like that too.
Yeah. So I think there's people need to know that distinction as well. There could be professional organizations that call themselves fraternities. So, okay, I've kept you a good amount of time, but there's like a few things that are so important. Gosh, there's like so much. So the academic piece, some students get worried about academics, the size of the class, being able to pass, being in an environment where you're an academic achiever surrounded by so many other academic achievers. I assume you're all doing well, but what I want to know is, when did you fail or get like a D or an F, like your freshman year? Like, when did you have that moment where you're like, oh crap, like I need to do something, or maybe this isn't the way I thought it was going to be? Did anybody have that experience and get through that? Nodding. A couple of the three of you, all of you have said, oh crap, I have failed. And is there someone in particular who was especially like freaked out by this?
So part of the requirement for the environmental science major, if you're going to get a BS, is to take chemistry. And so that was really hard to be in the environment with a lot of the pre-med people and I knew I wasn't going to be pre-med because it's kind of a weed out class for like people on that track. And the first semester was fine, but the second semester got a lot harder. And I ended up getting like a C+, honestly, and I was really happy with it at the end. And like each exam I felt was like would go really, really differently. Like I'd get an A on one of them and then like fail the next. And basically what I did was I just went, there's a lot of outside help for that, and I'd go to my teacher's office hours. I went to like, there's something called Chem Mentors, and I would like go study in groups and things like that. I sought a lot of outside help, and actually like before the final, I was working one-on-one with my chem professor for like 3 hours, and he just gave me so much time to help me, and it was so nice. And honestly, the class was super interesting, which helped me stay in it, and like I liked the class and I enjoyed going, so that definitely helped. But I'm someone who like sometimes I'll like see a grade and will get very personally sad by it and be like, oh my god, I'm not smart or something. But I think just knowing that you'll have good times and bad times, and you're just like, you're not going to get a good grade on everything always, is something to keep in mind.
Yeah. So you were shocked a little bit. Raina, you seem like you got a lot of bad grades. You're really nodding enthusiastically during this.
One experience. Yeah. My freshman year, I took Calc 1, which is like embarrassing because a lot of people say Calc 1 is like the easiest class they took. But because I went abroad my junior year, never ended up taking calculus in high school, which I think a lot of people do, or just some sort of intro to calc, but I never did that. So I was first introduced to it my freshman year, first semester, and I found that everyone in my class had taken either AP Calc and didn't get a good enough score to get credit, or they had just taken some other level of it in high school, so they needed to take it again. So I was in a class full of people who had taken it before, and then my professor hadn't ever taught Calc before, which was just kind of a recipe for disaster. And so this class for me was just really devastating. I think because it was first semester freshman year, so I kind of had this moment where I was thinking, like, am I going to do this poorly and struggle this much throughout my college experience? Like, is this what everything's going to look like? And then I found like that definitely wasn't the case. It was just one weak area, and I think everyone has one weak area. But it was definitely a really scary time because it made me question like how well I would do throughout the rest of my time at Emory. But luckily that didn't end up really being a reflection of that.
Yeah, that could be a real shock. Did any of you think of transferring? Is there anybody who thought of transferring or leaving that first year? Anybody get homesick, really painfully homesick at times?
Second semester got kind of hard. I like didn't really get along with my roommate, and things just got worse, and just some personal things happened that made me really just want to go home my freshman year. And then my sister came to visit me, which helped a lot. And I'm not really the type of person who gets homesick when I leave, but leaving for school is very different than like leaving to go to camp, because you're not having fun all the time. You're going through a lot of hard things and transitions. So just keeping in touch with family was really important to me. And it was hard to get through, but for me, the school part was kept me going, and I find school really interesting and fun. So just kind of like putting myself into my work helped a lot. And I knew Emory was right for me, and it was just sort of adjusting to living by myself was what I had
Yeah.
to do, regardless of where I was, I think.
Yeah, it's a really hard transition. I think a lot of people don't talk about just the pain and discomfort. What was your most difficult time, Ben?
When it's been hard to adjust to moving back home. I love my family, and I'm really glad to be home with them during this time, and glad that we're all healthy. But it was a bit of a shock to go home for spring break and then find out I wasn't coming back. And being a junior and having, like, I'm very lucky and I feel very fortunate that I'm not a senior. I can't imagine how a lot of them are feeling, but not being able to say bye to a lot of my friends who are seniors who I've gotten very close with, and not having any closure with them has been a bit difficult. And then having like the whole week long and the concert and stuff that I've been planning like since basically this fall, like canceled and all of that. But I think that's been kind of hard to adjust to. But I think it's just the new reality.
I would say my second semester sophomore year, I was taking like 20 credits, 21 credits, something absurd like that. And then I was like also like recruiting, because I'm in business, you have to recruit like your second semester sophomore year. And then I was also going through like the process to become a member of AKSI. So I had a lot of things on my plate. Like time management was something I thought I was really good at in high school, but it just turned out to be that like the rigor wasn't like as much as like college was. But then, you know, going to college and seeing that like every single minute that you spend like has to be like accounted for and has to be like properly planned out when you're in such a huge like such a high intensity of like activities. So that's what I had to go through. You know, I think out of it, like I became better at managing time and better at figuring out what my priorities are. And now it's just like a factor of like, do I want to ever put myself back into that? Do I ever want to take 21 credits again? Probably not. But you know, prioritizing what I really like value and like putting the most impact there.
But in terms of scholarships, in terms of grants, in terms of financial aid, is there anybody here who can offer some insight to help some juniors or seniors who maybe think this is out of their price range and why should they even look? Is there someone there who can offer some help?
The biggest thing I could say is that if you're set on Emory early, like really apply to some of the scholars programs, because those things like cover a lot of tuition and a lot of other, comes with a lot of perks. Because if you're a Woodruff scholar or if you're like a Goizeta scholar, those people have like, I think the financial side of things is pretty much set. So if you're early on, apply to these things early on and try to get on those programs early. Other than that, I'm not too sure. I think talking to I'm an RA as well, and talking to other residents, like I think financial aid at Emory is like not too bad. Like they haven't been terrible with it, but there's plenty of like opportunities for like outside scholarships to come in and play too.
And as an RA, do you get room and board? What's the perk for being a resident assistant?
So as an RA, you can only be an RA your third year at Emory. Your second year, you're a sophomore, and you can be an SA, what Raina mentioned earlier. You still have to pay for room and board, I think. But as an RA, they pay for room and board, and you just have to cover like tuition and like books and stuff like that.
So how much is room and board for an entire year, would you say, guesstimating?
I'm not too certain. Like once I got the position, I didn't really look back on like the price. Like I don't know if the rest of you guys would have like quotes. I think the house costs like something similar, but then there's like a chef price and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I don't want to put a price tag on it, but I know from talking to other RAs, it can range from $10,000 to $20,000
probably
worth of benefits, which is great. Is there anybody else who knows about scholarships, financial aid, anything that we can share for people watching?
I was just going to say what he had said. I do think that with Emory, if you contact them, like I know they have an office of financial aid that I've gone to before with questions, and I think they're super helpful. So I feel like they might be like a better resource than like what I know just off the top of my head. But I do know they're pretty open, like with any questions people have. Like I think they're pretty transparent, and like they really do want to help students with that.
We have covered so much, and I want to wrap things up, but I want to wrap it up with a question This is kind of the format of the Naked Roommate book. If you could go back in time, each of you, if you can go back in time and give senior you, okay, high school senior you, one tip based on your experience at Emory, whether it's been search and selection or whether it's been the most wonderful thing that happened, the most painful thing. I didn't get to talk about your love lives. So if you like, some of you, if you want to talk about your love life in this as well, this is always cool. People like to hear about that or not. Okay. But if you can go back in time and give you one tip based on your own experience, what would you tell you? And just give us like a quick little story of why you would tell you that thing. And I think I'll start with you, Erica.
I would say stick with like your guts and don't fall into what you think is happening, or know that other people will also put up a front, and to think that everyone will try and act like everything is like easy. Like people usually come to Emory and feel like there's cliques formed within 2 minutes, but that's not true. And I think being aware of that and making sure that it's okay to change friend groups, and if you're not with the people that you want to spend time with, just to look around and like branch out to people, because everyone's really nice and outgoing, I'd say, especially freshman year.
So to not put words in your mouth, but so the tip is to not let the clickiness or groups intimidate you, because when you got to school, you felt that. And then what happened that made you realize that what you thought was true isn't true? Because I think that's really where the meat of the advice comes from.
I think just spending time there and like seeing where a lot of the people are now, and you're like, I can't believe I was friends with her like freshman year, we're so different, or something like that. And being friends with people now who last year I would kind of know but not even know them at all, or like reach out to, and now we're super close. So just kind of reflecting on how those friendships formed and things like that.
Yeah. Well, from freshman to sophomore year, I think those 2 years are so dramatic of who you meet in the beginning and then how you form relationships. It seems like by doing things with people that had meaning to you, you were able to form really substantial relationships over time. And it seems like that's been the joy of it for you. Is that a good summary?
Yeah. This year I have some really good friends.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's awesome. Ben, you ready?
Yeah. I think I would tell myself to take a breath more. I think college is a very fast-paced environment, and I think it's very easy to get caught up in things that are going on, be it like just an argument with a friend, or like feeling like a grade, like we talked about earlier, or like or a certain club, getting into it or not getting into it, whatever. I think it's very easy to feel like that's such a big thing and get caught up in that moment because things are happening so quickly. And I think it makes it very easy to make maybe rash decisions or make decisions a bit too quickly. So I think I would tell myself to take a breath and just like slow down. College goes by really quickly. That sounds really cliche, but like I'm shocked. I'm about to be a senior. And I think I wouldn't necessarily change any of the decisions I made like throughout college, but I think I maybe would take them a bit slower, like relish it a bit more.
Yeah, I think this time definitely spotlights how quick things can just go away. Farhan, what would you tell you if you can go back in time and give senior you in high school some advice?
Yeah, I think I harped on it a little bit throughout this conversation about me being very like to myself. Senior year, that wasn't the case in high school. I was very much like outgoing with everyone in my class because it was a smaller setting. But I think I would tell myself, like, be prepared to go into like a larger environment and then maintain like that same outgoing energy if you have that energy. And like be open to like new things and new experiences at all, like whenever they come up, and like really relish these 4 years that you have. And on that note, like relish the time that you have with people who are older than you. So like seniors that you meet freshman year or juniors that you meet freshman, sophomore year, like really enjoy that time, because you never know when something like COVID-19 might come up and you won't ever see them again because they're going to go off and work in like Chicago or Los Angeles, and you don't know if you're going to see them. Like really enjoy those times that you have with those people, because they're the ones that you won't like really see anymore.
Yeah, and what's cool is people watching this can get to know all of you. Like they're gonna get to meet you, which is really great. So they'll get to know you. And then Raina, let's finish up with you. What would you tell you?
Yeah, I think what I was going to say has kind of been echoed throughout like the other comments. But I think similarly, I remember once I got into college really like focusing and stressing about small details like quiz grades or like during sorority recruitment and things like that. And so if I could go back and just not be as worried and waste as much energy, because I think college goes by so quickly that it's just too short to kind of, I don't know, waste time on like these small things that later on you won't think about. But I think when you first get there, you really like look at your own performance and criticize yourself a lot. The other thing I would say is definitely college is too short to kind of spend time with the people who you know aren't your people. Or if you're
Yeah.
studying a major that you feel like isn't for you, or you're in a club where you feel like it's not for you, I feel like there's really no shame. Like college is a time where you should be figuring that out. And so that's really, it's not even okay. It's like a great thing to learn that about yourself and to branch out and meet those people and find those clubs and find that major that is for you. So I think that that's something people don't necessarily realize, is that's not even a bad thing. It's college is like the time to realize those things and to experiment and to branch out and find more of like the person that you want to become.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I think of that as really going after what you want and making it be about what feels right for you as opposed to being wanted and included. And it sounds like that's been a big theme as well. You are all so generous. I know we went a little bit longer. Then we say, hey, welcome back. I'm so grateful that you can all be here. You're so kind. You are so generous. These are all current Emory students. All their information is in the notes. You can reach out to all of them about the things that we talked about. And you are all just great. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap this up? Or anything you need to explain? Anything that you regret saying that you want to clear the air about? I don't think there's anything too crazy about that. Well, I am Harlan Cohen, and I'm so grateful to have all of our guests here. You can reach out to them. You can ask them questions. They want to help. They want to be there. And perhaps they might even be your orientation leader, or perhaps an RA, or the president or leader of your organization. So thank you all for being here. I'm so grateful to have you here. Again, thanks.